Within exactly 10 seconds of your heart stopping, you lose consciousness. And within 20 to 40 seconds, the organized electrical waves in your brain, literally the very foundation of your thoughts, your memories, your entire perception, they begin to collapse completely. Wow. So it really is just a complete fade to black? Just an absolute shutting down of the system, right? That's exactly what we've always believed. But modern neuroscience is actually revealing that this final biological threshold is way more complex than just a simple off switch. Wait, hold on. If the electrical waves are collapsing within 40 seconds, how can it be anything other than completely quiet? Okay, let's dive into this because it brilliantly illustrates just how much we still don't understand about our own biology. In the moments immediately following cardiac arrest, the brain absolutely does not go quiet. It actually goes wild. Laboratory studies monitoring rats found this massive, dramatic spike in gamma wave activity in the 30 seconds right after the heart stops beating. Gamma waves? Those are the high-frequency ones, right? The ones associated with really complex states of conscious processing? Exactly. And the surge recorded in these studies, it was actually more intense than anything recorded during normal waking consciousness. We are talking about a literal neurological storm.
So, while that immense electrical storm is raging in the brain, what exactly is happening to the physical body? Well, it undergoes this remarkably precise, gravity-driven biochemical transformation. Almost immediately, like within minutes, Pallor Mortis sets in. Blood just stops circulating, and gravity pulls it right away from the skin's surface capillaries, completely draining the body's color. Alongside this, Algor Mortis begins. That's the steady cooling of the physical form, now that it just can't generate heat anymore. And then lividity begins shortly after that, right? Yes, Rigor Mortis. Between 30 minutes and 2 hours, that pooling blood causes a dark purple-red discoloration in the lowest parts of the body. It's actually a pattern so predictable that forensic scientists use it to tell if a body has been moved. But the really dramatic physical shift happens between 2 and 6 hours, and that's rigor mortis. The stiffening of the muscles, why does that lock in so predictably? It's purely biochemical. You see, to move or relax your muscles, your body requires a molecule called ATP. When the heart stops, ATP production just ceases completely, and without it, the muscle fibers permanently lock in a contracted state. It starts in the small muscles of the face and jaw, and by 12 hours, the entire body reaches full muscular rigidity.
With all of these processes triggering so incredibly quickly, the brain waves, the blood pooling, the temperature dropping, at what exact moment is a person actually irreversibly gone?
That brings us to a really critical medical distinction, the difference between clinical death and biological death. Clinical death is simply the cessation of heartbeat and breathing.
Which is the exact moment medical professionals usually look at the clock and declare a time of death.
Right. But biological death is the irreversible breakdown of cells and tissues. And the gap between those two states, that is the window where resuscitation is actually possible. Modern medicine has stretched that window in some truly astonishing ways. For example, in cases of cold water drowning, where drastically lowered body temperatures really slow down that cellular decay, people have been successfully resuscitated after 40 minutes of clinical death. The boundary between life and death is far, far less fixed than it appears.
So what is the actual tipping point then? What physically pushes the body past that biological point of no return? The answer is 38 trillion. That is the staggering number of microorganisms, we're talking bacteria, fungi, and other microbes currently living inside your digestive system. The microbiome, the very organisms that digest our food and keep us alive every single day. Precisely. During life, your immune system keeps them strictly contained. But at the exact moment of biological death, the immune system just collapses. Without that defense mechanism, those 38 trillion organisms immediately change roles. They begin consuming the body from the inside out, starting right with the nutrient-rich tissues of the intestines.
Let's trace how this builds, because it's fascinating. As those internal microbes relentlessly consume the tissues, they release gases, primarily hydrogen sulfide, methane, ammonia, and carbon dioxide.
Which is what causes the intense physical pressure and bloating we associate with decomposition.
Yes. The pressure builds and builds until it triggers active purging, which expels fluids and gases from the body. Now, what is truly remarkable about this sequence is the ecological result of the whole process. This active decomposition releases an absolute flood of nutrient-rich compounds straight into the earth.
So it's not just breaking down, it's actively feeding the surrounding ecosystem.
Exactly. Studies from forensic body farms show that the soil directly beneath the decomposing body becomes so extraordinarily rich that it supports immensely accelerated plant growth for years afterward. The breakdown of the human form isn't just an end state, it's actually the necessary biological catalyst for a massive burst of new life.
Okay, that handles the physical vessel, right? The breakdown of flesh and bone. But what happens to the mind? Does consciousness really just evaporate when the brain loses oxygen? Well, the strict scientific consensus has long argued that consciousness is purely a product of brain activity. So when the brain ceases to function, consciousness supposedly ceases right along with it. But the data presents some really deep anomalies. Take the AWARE study, led by Dr. Sam Parnia. They rigorously investigated near-death experiences in cardiac arrest survivors across multiple hospitals. Wait, 40% reported awareness? Literally 4 out of 10 people who were clinically dead? Yes, 40% of successfully resuscitated survivors recalled some form of awareness. Even more inexplicably, a subset of those patients reported highly specific, accurate perceptions of the room. We're talking conversations, precise medical procedures, intricate details of equipment. Events that occurred while they were clinically dead and biologically incapable of sensory perception.
And the mystery only deepens with the newest data. A 2023 study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences closely monitored the brain activity of 4 dying patients as they were removed from life support.
Did they observe that same gamma wave spike we talked about earlier in the laboratory rat studies?
They did. In 2 of the 4 patients, the moment of death triggered a dramatic, completely unexpected burst of gamma waves. And crucially, this high-frequency activity was concentrated heavily in the regions of the brain specifically associated with dreaming and conscious perception.
So their dying brains were actively experiencing something profound.
Exactly. The completely honest scientific answer regarding consciousness after death is that we genuinely do not know. We have strong theoretical frameworks suggesting it ends, yet we have this staggering empirical evidence of intense brain activity sitting right alongside millions of highly consistent near-death reports across every single culture and education level. The true nature of this final conscious threshold remains a deep, deep scientific unknown.
How do we even bear the weight of that unknown? The reality that every single human will inevitably step over a threshold we fundamentally cannot map. Well, we're the only species known to science that actually contemplates its own death, and how we manage that death anxiety shapes our entire human civilization. Consider the different paradigms around the world. In the Mexican Dia de los Muertos tradition, death isn't a final separation. It's a temporary thinning of the boundary between the living and the dead. In Indonesia, the Torajan culture keeps the deceased right in the family home for months, literally treating them as sick until elaborate funeral rites are completely fulfilled. And the Tibetan Buddhist tradition treats the transition itself as something to be actively mapped and navigated for rebirth. Yes, a highly sophisticated attempt to map the subjective experience of dying. But contrast all of that with modern Western culture. Sociologists actually classify it as death-denying. The entire process is strictly medicalized, hidden away in hospitals, and completely removed from daily life. Researchers argue this absolute avoidance has deep psychological consequences. Basically, a society unable to openly look at death is stripped of the ability to fully appreciate life.
When you hide from the reality of the end, you completely miss the beauty of what it actually represents in the natural order. That brings us to this ultimate cosmic perspective. The exact atoms creating your physical form right now have existed for billions of years. They have cycled through ancient forests, deep oceans, and distant stars. And for this one brief, highly improbable window of time, they configured themselves into something complex enough to actually be aware of its own existence, something capable of asking what it all means. And when the biological machine inevitably stops, those atoms simply scatter back into the soil, the water, and the air to continue the infinite cycle of matter through time. The body breaks down, the mystery of consciousness crosses its threshold, and the very elements that made you return to the universe. If nothing is ever truly lost and everything is only transformed, what will your atoms become next?